Hello, everybody, and welcome to Map Making. My name is James Sisti. I'm a professional artist, wilderness guide, and tonight I have the wonderful opportunity to be your instructor. We're going to be working on a really interesting project today. We're going to be learning the basics of maps. We're going to be going over their different types and purposes, their anatomy. We're also going to be learning a bit about compasses as well. We're going to be creating an adventure of our own, and we're going to be mapping that adventure out. And we're going to be basically going on an imaginary adventure together too as we create our maps. We have a really wonderful sponsor tonight. They're called Adventure Untamed. They're a guide outfit located in New York City, and they actually run trips in all of the areas close to New York City, the Hudson Highlands, the Catskill Mountains, you name it. And it wouldn't be possible for us to be able to do this without the trails themselves. And that's why we're all here today too. We're here to benefit the New York, New Jersey Trail Conference. These are the folks who are responsible for building and maintaining these trails. It's a volunteer organization, and it has some of the most wonderful scenic areas in New York for your leisure. So without further ado, I'm going to share my screen. I have my top-down video again, which is what I'm going to be drawing from. Okay, so that's right down here. And I'm also going to be sharing right here my slideshow. Okay, let's get started, shall we? So I already introduced myself. I gave a little breakdown about what we're going to be doing today. Okay, so before we even get started with maps, we have to have a goal. We have to think about what we're going to be doing that requires a map in the first place, right? Any type of expedition or day trip requires a little bit of planning. And understanding our goals is really how we can understand our logistics. And that's how we can achieve our objectives. So some of the basic stuff, this is all for you to read through later if you want, but just the common sense stuff is to just understand the environmental conditions, understand what kind of terrain you're going to be dealing with, what kind of weather you're going to be dealing with, if you guys need resources or not, like if you're doing a multi-day backpacking trip, and also things like wildlife, what you're going to encounter, stuff like that. So before we even go out there, we always want to make sure that we have a lifeline. That means people know where we are. Okay, so if you have your friends at home or your family at home, just tell them where you're going and when they can expect you to come back. And if they don't hear from you from in a certain time window, who they can call in order to help effect a rescue if that's necessary, right? And before we take on obstacles or challenges that are beyond our threshold, we want to train for that in advance. So that's just the ramp into tonight's subject, is just having a goal in mind and preparing yourself for that goal. So because we have a lot of awesome adventures we can do, I would love to take this opportunity to introduce Yana from Adventure Untamed, and she's just going to say a couple of quick words about her guide company. And I'm going to spotlight your video so that everybody can see your face. Hi, Yana.
Hi, James. Thank you so much. As James said, my name is Yana. I'm the founder and owner of Adventure Untamed. We are a New York City guiding company with kind of an interesting story. We started in the middle of this current pandemic, and you might ask yourself, why would anyone possibly start a travel company in the middle of a pandemic? Well, you see, before this, I used to work for a different company, a different travel company based in New York City that unfortunately shut down during the pandemic. And I was very attached to that company and to the people that I worked with, the guides that I guided with, including James and everyone else on the team. So, at a certain point, I just figured that if I wanted it to keep going, the only way to keep it going is for me to keep it going. So I got started in the planning stages. We couldn't operate for about 4 months, which was kind of a good thing because it gave me a chance to set everything up, and we've been operational since August 15th. And to tell you a little bit about what we do, we offer guided trips in all sorts of different areas of adventure, a lot of hikes, but also ice climbing, rock climbing. We have some trips that require beginning mountaineering, biking, things like that. And our goal is to really meet you where you are and allow you access to the outdoors. And that means a couple of things. From New York City, we offer transportation. So if you don't have a car, you can have transportation from New York, or you can drive to meet us if you feel more comfortable. And we also have hikes and trips at all different levels. So you can be a complete beginner who maybe just hiked once with your parents when you're 14, or maybe you haven't hiked at all, and that's great. Or you could be somebody, we have some people on our trips that have summited K2. That's not a joke. Uh, Actually, this person is trying to summit it again. So
That's
as you
incredible.
Yeah, so some of the best things about the trips is meeting really interesting people, both guides and other participants. So that's what we do. And we also do, for those of you around the country, we do regional trips as well. So we do trips up in upstate New York, in the White Mountains in New Hampshire. And in 2021, when everything settles down, we hope to get back to doing international trips, like going to
Amen.
Mount Kilimanjaro. So that's a little bit about what we do, and very, very honored to be a part of this. Thank you, James. James is an incredible guide, incredible artist, and I think we're in for a treat tonight. And
Thank
of
you.
course, none of this would be, oh, absolutely. And of course, none of this would be possible without New York, New Jersey Trail Conference, because they literally build, maintain, and create the trails that we all use to get outdoors. So thank you all. Very proud to be in such great company.
Awesome. Well said, Yana. Cool. So now that we're all formally introduced, let's go ahead and dive right in. So what we have in front of us right here, boom, is our different types of maps, right? There's all kinds. And right here, we're going to jump right in to the whole purpose of them, right? So they're literally meant to create a context, to create a sense of awareness of what's around you in a geographical location. That sounds like common sense, but it also has, again, objectives and goals in mind to help ensure your success. So as we navigate and as we continue to go through this course tonight, we're going to be thinking about not only types of routes that we're going to be traveling across, but what's the most efficient type of travel, and what types of hazards and also natural resources could we use and avoid along the way, right? So for example, in this screen, we are looking at a topographical map that demonstrates changes in elevation, and it's the most common type of hiking map. That's probably what you're going to see 9 times out of 10 when you go into an outdoor outfitter and pick up a trail map. Okay, so that's kind of what we're going to be familiarizing with ourselves tonight. So in terms of the other varieties of maps and their different purposes, they're like, for example, if you live in New York City or close to New York City like me, you're very familiar with the metro system and all these types of city maps, right? And the whole point of these maps is to simplify information by removing excess data, right? You don't have to think about the streets when you're only worried about a rail, right? Just like in Seattle, they have the light rail station. You don't have to worry about the crossroads and intersections. All you have to worry about is the transit line. And that's kind of like what we're thinking about as we begin to make our maps tonight. We want to filter out all the unnecessary information in order to make our tool hyper-focused on our activity, right? We also have demographic maps. Like, for example, we have this particular model of a recent bald eagle count in the United States. We also have a geological survey map from Yosemite National Park. These demonstrate essentially a concentration or given metric in an area. So it's usually color coded. We do that with our trails, essentially. Like we're not creating demographics with our trail maps, but for example, if I'm hiking through if I'm on the Appalachian Trail in the eastern United States, I know that trail blaze is always going to be white. And if I want to take other trails, maybe they're red or blue or yellow, that's going to help me to understand where I'm at on the map as well, right? So here's a closer look. This is another view of a topographic map. In fact, this is from one of the maps that the New York, New Jersey Trail Conference creates for the trails that they maintain and operate. And as you look at this map, you're looking at these lines, a lot of these brown lines on the map. Some of them are closer together and others are further apart. these brown lines represent changes in elevation. So the closer they are together, the steeper the, the geography is. And we're seeing numbers here on the map, not the ones in red, but the numbers that are in brown, those represent elevation, right? So that little X on the right-hand side with the 1,204 next to it is signifying the altitude, or the elevation rather, for that specific place on the map. Also notice that there's a grid. That's why we're going to be working with graph paper today, because it's a lot easier to plot coordinates when you have a type of grid system already in place. And it's also a way in which we can work with our compass to basically calibrate our map. And we'll go over that in a little bit too. For climbers, I know that there are a lot of rock climbers as well as ice climbers here. These are the kinds of route maps that we're used to seeing. The one on the right is for a rock route up in the Gunks called Out of Sight. These are mostly hand-drawn maps 9 times out of 10. You can see the one on the left is overlaid on a photograph. Now, the reason why I brought that one to your attention is because we have such amazing technology at our disposal nowadays, where you can take, let's say, a Google satellite image and have satellite photography as your base layer, and then create a map for a hike based on a satellite picture. Pretty awesome stuff. The same thing can be done for climbing routes, although you definitely want more exact data as you entrust, as you bring other people with you. So then finally we have narrative maps. These are maps that tell a story, right? These either have a progression of a historic event or some type of narration. As we can see on the left, this is an example of Sir Edmund Hillary's ascent of Mount Everest. Very famous historical event, right? That's an example of a nonfiction narrative map. Whereas on the right, obviously the greatest story ever told, The Lord of the Rings, that's from J.R.R. Tolkien's his fictional universe of Middle Earth, right? So there's a lot of ways in which we can tell the story of our hike on our map as well. For example, if you're into birds, you can write down the different types of birds that you're seeing at different points along the way. And even though it's a very simple narrative, this is a great way to kind of show the progression of your story as you went on a hike. Conversely, if you're somebody who's doing a mega hike like the John Muir Trail, or you're doing something like the Appalachian Trail or the Long Path, this is kind of like a way to keep a journal. And as you go and you clip through different sections of the map, you're able to add the different parts of your journey and make it super personal. So by the end of it, you have a chronological record of what happened and where. And that, I think, is very special, especially for people who are really into those long distance types hikes. So, last but not least, sketch maps. I love sketch maps. These are always hand-drawn, obviously, but the idea is that you're really focused on a specific thing. Like, for example, this little map that I did around Maple Pond Preserve this summer was essentially a survey of the different wildlife activity that I was noticing along the way, right? Now on the right-hand side, it's more geared towards elevation. This is the Great Range Traverse up in the Adirondacks. So this is more for me to just understand, what the route will be like over the course of the next day or so, all right? So at this point, since we talked about all the different types of maps, let's talk to the types of people. Let's talk to the people that create these types of maps. And I'd like to introduce at this time Heather from the New York, New Jersey Trail Conference, and she's going to say a couple of words about what they do as an organization. And yeah, I'll spotlight Heather right now and take it away.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, James.
You're welcome.
Hi, everybody. My name is Heather. I apologize. My web camera is not working today. I am the Community Outreach Coordinator for the New York, New Jersey Trail Conference. And our passion and our mission is creating great trail experiences. And we accomplish this through our 2,000 plus volunteers who build, maintain, and protect trails, and they help to steward parklands. because we believe everyone who seeks the outdoors should have the opportunity to connect with nature. And we've been doing this important work since 1920. We actually turned 100 last month, which was pretty exciting to be a part of. So thank you so much for your generous gifts and donations that you've made in attending this workshop. Your gifts are enabling us to continue to digitally engage and train our volunteers during these challenging times. And our work is really only made possible through the support of our volunteers, donors, and members. So to give you examples of the kinds of different things that we do, our volunteers, since they're the boots on the ground, making these incredible trail improvements, they're the ones that are giving us the data for our cartographer to actually make our maps. So our maps are truly a labor of love that the people who are working so hard to protect these experiences are also empowering people to have the resources to get out there and responsibly enjoy it. So if you're interested in either volunteering with us, becoming a member, donating to support our mission, you can learn more on our website, which is nynjtc.org, which is right there on the screen. You can also connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and you'll be chatting with me so I can get you connected with whatever volunteer opportunity. Or if you're just looking for hike recommendations, I'm always happy to help. Yeah, so thank you so much. It's incredible to see so many people here passionate about maps, and you're our kind of people. So if you want to learn more and join our community, please reach out.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Heather. All right, folks. So for the next step of our journey together, we're going to be going into some premiere of compass, basic compass use, right? So obviously we need to know how maps work. We kind of went over that. Now let's talk about compasses, right? There are many, and not two are the same. They are not equal in quality. And I have two examples for you to see tonight as well. So essentially, when you invest in a compass, there's two kinds that are generally out on the market. There's the base plate compass, which is depicted here in the map, in the picture. And then there's also a different type, or like a bearing compass, which I'll show in a little bit, right? So essentially, the reason why we like these base plate ones is because you can lay them flat on top of the map. They're see-through. They have measuring increments already built into them. And they're just kind of sleek. They can fit in your pocket, or you can wear them around your neck. And they're just a nice tool to have handy when you're hiking, right? Secondly, you know, there's a sighting compass, which I'll show you in a minute, which is designed really for use not on a map. And the reason why it's called a sighting compass is because it has a sight. And you will look through the sight in order to take a figure or an estimate based on your location in a wilderness setting, right? And we'll talk about the different techniques on how to work this stuff out for your own as well. But believe it or not, everybody with a smartphone has a compass as well. I know for example, iPhone has a built-in compass that's default. So if you go into your search and you type in compass, voila, you will have a working compass. Although it is it is definitely an accurate compass. It's a compass that is dependent on a battery life. And that's something that could be that's fine for a day hike if you have a backup charge. I always like the old school method. I like the actual hardware of a real compass, because that obviously is something that doesn't require a charge. It won't run out of energy, and it'll probably last you forever. Okay, so here are the two differences between the most common types of compass that we have out in the market right now. And I'm gonna try to hide my portrait in the top so that we can really look at that. There we go. Okay, minimize, great. So these two types of compasses are very much similar in the fact that they tell you which direction is north, okay? The base plate compass, right, the one on the right, is again what we like when we're planning our trips. We like to lay this down on top of our map, and we like to essentially use all these increments to know what we're getting into in terms of the distance that we're traveling. On both of these compasses, the thing you want to know, okay, there's this little red box, right? It kind of looks like a little, it looks like an empty arrow. We call that the doghouse. So this bezel turns, right? And if you are trying to get a reading on the direction that you're facing, you want to make sure that the red arrow goes inside the doghouse, right? Because the red arrow always points north, and the wheel, the bezel ring, okay, and I'll make sure that you can see my arrow here, this round thing turns. So if I were to turn clockwise till the N was here and the arrow north, was in the doghouse, that means I will be facing what direction? West, right? Since I'm turning it clockwise. And I'll make sure I can show you in a top-down view as well. And then for the sighting compass, right? There's a little notch that we look through. So if you're trying to aim at an actual physical object, that's the sighting for it. And the mirror is a great convenience. It has two purposes. One, you'll be able to see this more clearly as you're looking through your notch. And two, if you ever need to be rescued, it's a great signaling mirror, okay? So, moving on. That's the basic compass anatomy. Okay, we also have orienting lines and things like that. We'll get to that in a little bit. So these are navigational methods that I'm going to talk to as we draw, because people came here to make maps. This is a resource that I want you to read on your own time. Essentially, these are the different methods and things that we do to help us when we make errors in navigating. And if you're not making errors in navigating, then you're not really learning, right? You want to get out there and you want to do this in real life. And you know what? If you get it perfect every time, then great. You're like part of 1% of people that get it right every single time. If not, these are some handy tricks that you can use in your maps that you make for yourself, or the maps that you use to help get you back on course, okay? One such example is a handrail method. Okay, if our hiking trail is running parallel to a river or a stream, we can look on the map on how far our trail runs parallel with that stream. And once we know once the trail turns away from the river, we'll be able to pinpoint exactly where we are on the map. And we'll also know that the river is always, let's say, east of where we're traveling, okay? So read this on your own. Same thing here, aiming off, azimuths, things like that. That's all stuff that I want you to study up on your own, okay? So if, for example, you get lost, okay, remember how I said earlier, getting started, you want to make sure that people know where you are. This is a great way, right, to just get third parties involved. Basically, people who you can trust that are not on the hike with you. These are family, friends, and also local authorities, okay? So in the event an emergency situation should occur, people will know where you are approximately, and it's a better chance of you getting rescued. If you do get lost, and I mean lost, the difference between turnaround and lost is turnaround means you know what trail you're on, you just don't know which trail, not exactly where on the trail you are. That's just turned around. Getting lost means you literally have no idea where you are, and that's scary, okay? So the first thing you should always do if you are truly lost is stop exactly where you are if it's safe, sit down, catch your breath, and drink some water, okay? One thing I always encourage is when people hike, just to keep looking over your shoulder and look back, take some time to turn around and look around, just so that you can find something familiar. In case you do get lost, you might not be that lost after all. You might be very close to something that you recognize, right? If you reverse your course, okay, that's probably a nice way to get found, but people tend to drift off in all kinds of different directions and make mistakes, especially when they're panicking. So in the picture here, we have a little strip of material tied to a tree. What you would do in this situation is you would have either a bandana or something like this, a little strip of tape here, and you would put it on a tree where you can see it, and you would walk or backtrack in a direction that you came from without losing sight of that. and then you'd tie another one, and you'd sort of create a breadcrumb trail as to where you are. Not only will this give you at least a point of reference, but if people are looking for you and they see this, this will help them find you too. And if it's starting to get dark, you and hey, it happens. You know what? Sometimes it's best just to sit still and spend the night. That's why it's good to be prepared and to have a little bit of an extra layer or some extra water or food with you. Anything that would help your core temperature control. That's the kind of stuff that you want to bring in case you're doing like a longer hike. Okay. And also, while this is all happening, this whole drama is unfolding, your support system that you set up before you even started hiking is kicking into action. People are already actively looking for you. Okay. So these are some additional tips. You can go ahead and read that at your leisure as well. Okay. Now let's get into the fun part. Let's start drawing maps now. Okay. So things we're going to include, I have my top-down camera here, which I'm going to share with you in just a second. I have my drawing materials with me. Okay, here we go. So first and foremost, I have my graph paper. Okay, this is just standard graph paper that we'd use in geometry class. Okay, and I already got started making a little map here just so that we can work on this together too. So I take a nice clean sheet of graph paper. Alrighty. And these are things that you want to take on your hikes with you. Usually what I like to do is fold it in half like this. So it's something that's relatively pocket sized, okay? And I usually put it in a little Ziploc bag when I take it with me. Second, I got my pencil and a pen. We're also gonna be working with colored pencils, so I'll put those off to the sides as well. And we have our handy compass. So this is the sighting compass that I was referring to earlier, okay? So you can tell that this compass has an entirely different anatomy, okay? And once it gets settled and starts jumbling around, wherever this arrow is north, okay? Conversely, this is a compass that is just purely a toy, okay? Now, even though it kind of is pointing in a northern direction, look at the difference here. Okay, this is why when I talk about investing in a quality compass, it really matters. This is a quality compass, and its north is facing this way, whereas this toy compass, its north is facing this way. Okay, so the toys belong with the kids or in the garbage. We don't use those. Okay, so I'm going to pull one of my New York, New Jersey Trail Conference maps here. And we're going to go on an imaginary hike. And I'm going to use this as a reference so that we're all on the same page here. Okay. This is a topographical map. Okay. And I don't know if you can see because of the light, but these light brown lines represent changes in elevation. Okay. So we're going to be climbing a mountain. So this is Storm King Mountain. Okay. For those of us who are not in the New York area, this is a beautiful scenic hike right along the Hudson River, okay? And we're gonna say for our adventure today, based on the map that exists right here, let's say we're gonna do a camp out, okay? And we're gonna go ahead and just spend one night in the woods, and we're gonna do a loop. We're gonna do a loop hike, okay? It's not a very long hike, but hey, it's the weekend and we all have work on Monday, so let's pretend. So we're going to have a starting point, and our route is going to essentially take us up the mountain, past all these beautiful scenic locations here, okay? And then we're going to come back down to see some more. Every time you see a star is a scenic location, by the way. That's one of the reasons why I like these maps. And we're going to come back to the origin point right here, okay? So we're going to pick a camp spot along the way, which means that we also need to know where certain water sources are, right? So just looking at the map right here, we can tell that there's a water source right here. This is a little creek. It comes down into a marsh. In fact, there's a couple of different creeks in here. So maybe our camp spot will be somewhere down in here, okay? And let's say, for example, we want to use our own tents. Like, we're not going to use any of the man-made shelters along the way. That's cool. We'll just have to make a little note as to where we're planning on camping. So last thing, okay, I want to share with you before we start drawing, and thank you for your patience, is I want to show you the map key, okay? Now, these blue lines are situated so that they are aligned with what is considered true north, okay? So if we look, we have a ruler here. This direction is true north, okay? What's the difference between true north and magnetic north? Great question. So when we are using our compass in this location, and it's hard to see, in this location, there's a 13-degree difference between true north and magnetic north. That has to do with our lines of latitude and longitude. So we're just going to do 13 degrees off, okay, in order to get magnetic north. Okay, let's do the fun stuff. So I have my paper here. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a box. If you ever taken a drawing class with me, you kind of know where this is going. The reason why I like to make a box is because it gives me a place to include everything that I'm responsible for as the navigator in this case, as the map maker. And again, we're working with a pretty small footprint here. You know, it's not a huge place, Storm King Mountain. So we can work with this square area, and everything in here is going to be our map. That gives us a lot of room for notes. So we have our map key. All of our notes are going to go in this spot right here to the right. Okay. So all we did was just draw a square and leave some room for some notes. So we have to give a name to our map. So since we're going to be hiking Storm King Mountain, right? Today's the 19th of November. All right. So let's say we're going to go on Saturday. So the title of this map is going to be 1121 Storm King Camp / hike. Okay. Now, I usually have a book where I keep all of my hand-drawn maps in, and that way I kind of have a journal of all the different trips and adventures that I go on, right? You don't have to do it like that. If you want to create a map that's something that you can just keep in your pocket and fold, again, just throw it in a Ziploc bag and you're good to go. So there's a ton of information on this road, okay? And on this map, rather. And we don't need all of it. So really what we're going to do is we're going to filter down this map so that we can get just the bare essentials for our goals, okay? So what are our goals? So on the back, I'm just going to write goals. Hike Storm King. Camp. So that's goal number 1. And I'm also going to include the date, right? Because that's important information we're going to share. We're going to share all of this information with the people who aren't coming with us, all right? 2, we're going to camp in the valley, which is this little area right here. You can tell it's a valley because of the way the contour lines change. Okay. To the southeast rather. Okay. Because again, if this way is north, okay, if north is this way, south is this way, so this puts us southeast. So we're going to camp in the valley in the southeast between 2 creeks. Okay. So for the people, and we're going to do it near the Blue Trail. And for everybody who knows their New York State laws, you need to be at least 150 feet away from the trail and any source of water in order to be legally camping there, okay? So that means that if nighttime comes, okay, this is where we're all going to be camping, somewhere around here in between the two creeks. And let's say, for example, someone gets sick and we can't pull out of there in time. You know, this is a worst case scenario. Our contacts, our emergency network outside of this, right? They're going to know where to look for us, and that's going to be right here. Okay, so if stuff goes wrong and we stay put, we know that people are going to come looking for us at a certain point. Okay, so that's why it's important to write this stuff down. Okay, and then third, we're going to hike out. Okay, via blue and white trail. Okay, so this is just baseline goals for how we're going to start our map. Okay, we're going to start in this parking lot, and we're going to notice on this map, this parking lot is located on 9W. So that's the road in which we're driving in from, right? So that's a good place from lot on 9W. Okay, that's a good place to have a starting point in our map. Okay, and we're not going to trace this exactly, right? Again, what we want to do is we want to create something that is a really efficient tool for us. So let's say, for example, and I'm just going to use my pencil very lightly here. This is 9W. Let's pretend that our parking lot is located right here, okay? Okay, tons of information. We only want the important stuff for our trip. Okay, so on these types of maps, roads and other man-made objects are usually black. Okay, so you can just use your pencil to shade that in. Okay. Oh, and excuse me, sorry, before we even keep going, I'm going to add a compass here as well. So since the map is calibrated where north is in this direction, that means south is in this direction. Okay, so that's going to help us out tremendously. And you could also have the magnetic north, 13 degrees. Okay, so this is going to be our little compass rose right down here. Okay, so 9W conveniently is to the west of the parking lot. Great, good to know. Now, I'm going to go ahead and, with my goals in mind, remember, we're going to be following this white trail. I'm going to do this very, very light with my pencil because I want to use a colored pencil to help make this pop here. So I'm going to draw this as a dotted line for right now, and then we'll go over it with the colored pencil in a minute. We're going to hike our white trail. Okay, and since we're in the US, we're going to be using the empiric system. So we're going to be going by miles. Okay, and this little section is about 0.45 miles, or about a half a mile. Okay, and it's going kind of uphill, right? It's going along a hill. So when we get to this blue part, right around here, okay, this is going to be an intersection. Okay, this is where the white trail and the blue trail intersect. So that's a good point to note. So we're going to say white and blue, because sometimes, even though both trails intersect, sometimes you only see one of them represented on trail with a painted swatch. Okay, that's important. So I'm going to just quickly note, and again, I want to have a nice representation of this. So I'm going to grab my blue colored pencil after I map it out, and I'm going to go ahead and color my blue trail blue. Just only feels right to do it that way. Okay, this is going to tell me that this is a blue trail. And it's also going to tell me okay, where we're going to be camping. Okay, so since we're not going this way, for all intents and purposes, I'm just going to end with a little arrow showing that the trail goes this way, that there's something else there. Okay, so we're not, notice how we're not going in chronological order here, right? Because obviously if we were, we would have mapped out our hike first, okay? But what we're doing is we're working from our origin point, which is the parking lot on 9W. We're getting to a point where there's an intersection, okay? This is important information too. Okay, and here's the blue trail right there. Okay. But we're going to focus on where we're spending the most time, okay? That's the goal. We have this camp area sorted. We're probably going to be hiking for about 3 hours. We're probably going to be camping for about 8 or 9 hours. So that's why I'm spending so much time fixating on this specific spot, because that's where we're going to be investing the most of our time on this trip, in the camping part. So I have 2 blues, because I got the advanced colorers pack. And we're going to use the lightest color blue to signify the stream that is going to come through. Now, if I notice on this map here, okay, I'm just going to hold it up to the camera so you can see. Noticing on this map here, okay, this stream is north of the parking lot. And it runs northeast all the way out into the Hudson River. So because I have my compass rose and because I have my compass handy, mine's off to the side, I know that it's a safe bet to say that this stream that goes north of the parking lots will wend its way, depending upon its volume. I'm not talking about sound, I'm talking about the amount of flow in its trajectory through the landscape. And then this will go off the map, and I'll point a little arrow this way because this is the way in which water is flowing, because it's flowing downhill. Once water starts flowing uphill, you got a problem. Okay. So I'm just gonna color that in a little bit more with my light blue pencil. And this is important for us because it's a water source. Now there's a fork here, okay? And we have an option, okay, as campers. We can either camp directly in between, here we go, and this is cool because it follows the same course as the trail. We can camp directly between these two little creeks that merge here, or we can camp somewhere over here. Now, depending upon the terrain, depending upon whether or not it's flooding, that's going to determine your position. But hear me out. Here's a strategy for you. Let's say something happened and I had to come looking for you. Would it not be easier for me to look to the west, or sorry, to the east, the northeast of the blue trail in between 2 creeks? Because it is converging to a point. Whereas if I had to look between 2 creeks, somewhere between 9W and the blue trail, that's going to make my life as a rescuer a heck of a lot harder. Okay? So just for strategic sake, and again, whenever you pick a campsite, you want to know the 5 W's. You want to know where wind is coming from, where water is. If there's wood to use for fuel, we only use fallen dead fuel. If you look up, they call them widow makers. These are just hanging dead wood that's just waiting to fall out of a tree. And wildlife. You want to make sure that you're not in the middle of a dangerous area. So let's just say that our camp is going to be here. Okay, and I'm going to draw a little old school tent icon right there. Now check it out. In our notes section, we're going to have a little list, okay? So here's a map I drew of a climb I did with my buddy up in northern Maine, okay? And the icons that I put on my map are all important to the objectives of my climb. And I made a little icon key to help other people understand what these different symbols mean, okay? So that's kind of what we're going to do on this over here, we're going to make a little tent icon just like this. Okay, it's just a little triangle. All right, this is our old school Boy Scout tent right there, probably made out of canvas, an olive drab. Okay, so we're gonna have our first icon, which is going to be campsite. I think that's one word. Oh well. So this is going to be our campsite. This is where people are going to look for us in case something happens. Luckily, we have plenty of water to get by. All right, and hopefully the weather's going to be great. But we already know it's going to be great because we check the weather beforehand. Okay. Okay. So Yana will tell you some of the best hikes happen in the rain, but at least you're prepared for it so that you can enjoy it and not be surprised for it. So we also notice on this map that there is a dotted line, okay? Now this dotted line that cuts across is sort of a trail that isn't a trail, meaning that you can walk there, you can traverse it, it might be an old road, it might be an old path. It's something that was worth noting on the map, but it's not a typical route for hikers, okay? That's something that we should really include on our map though, because guess what? Let's say, for example, again, we're thinking worst case scenario here, be prepared, right? This is steep, okay? Once we get on the blue trail up here, and we could even write it down, steep, in the direction of which it gets steep. We're not gonna have to hike up a mountain and then go to the parking lot. What we can do is, and I'm gonna include this in red because it's important, okay? This is our emergency evacuation route, our EER. So this follows our creek. So we know that the creek is north of the parking lot. We can follow the darn creek and that'll eventually help us get to our parking lot where we started. And we don't have to climb up the steep mountain, okay? So that's just another nice benefit of having a good idea of where you're spending the most time, because you're going to be able to know all the stuff that the typical day hiker wouldn't if they didn't plan their trip accordingly. Okay, so this is going to go this way, and this is going to go, boom. It's going to hook up with the white trail, and that'll bring us home, okay? Okay, so this is our emergency escape route, our EER, and it goes that way. Trivia, what direction is this? Again, our parking lot is near 9W, so that means west, okay? So a westerly course. Okay, that's a lot of info for just this part. That's okay. The hiking part gets easier, believe it or not. You know, since we're investing the most amount of time here, that's why we're focusing on this. But let's continue. Let's do our hike now. And I also want to note one more thing before we do our hike. So this isn't going to be to scale. So what you could do is you could write in an asterisk, not to scale. Otherwise, we'd be here with our ruler kind of factoring in everything perfectly. These maps are super high quality, meaning there is a professional map maker, cartographer, sitting there with measurements and increments and all kinds of technology and math that is really important, okay? We acknowledge this. This map is coming with us on our hike, but we're gonna do something a little bit more general, okay? So with that in mind, we're gonna be sandwiched in between two main roads. And believe it or not, there's another parking lot over here. We're not gonna be doing anything with that parking lot. It's for an emergency only. And this is Route 218. Okay, that is east of camp. Okay, Let's say, for example, God forbid, there's a wildfire and this is all burning and our escape route is cut off. We know that our other escape route, again, our EER can go in both ways. We can follow that to the other road where there's another parking lot and hitch out of there. Okay? So in case for whatever reason there is no way we can get out, it's very, very dramatic in the Hudson Highlands. We can have an alternate. Even though our car is over here, we can maybe pick up a ride or something and just be seen by people. Okay? That's important too. Okay, back to hiking. So we want to go ahead and acknowledge the beautiful sights and stuff that we're going to be seeing over here. And tell you what, I'm probably going to go a little bit over into this territory. That's fine. It doesn't matter. Okay, if we want to go ahead and map out this entire part, I'm going to be drawing over this stuff. Let's just say that we didn't want to do this hike because too many weekend tourists on it. Let's go this way instead. All right, so this is a yellow trail now, which is important because this is another intersection right here where white trail meets yellow trail. So even though it doesn't show that this is a yellow trail on the map right there, I want to go ahead and indicate that a little bit earlier, just so that I know that what this trail is intersecting is with a white and a yellow. And we want to go in a westerly direction this way. That's why I like drawing arrows on my route, because it shows the direction of travel. And we have a couple of really nice scenic viewpoints. It's a little bit higher up on the mountain, which I like. Okay. And we have all these other different icons on there too, right? We have these little highland signs there. And if we want to go ahead and say, okay, this is part of the Highlands Trail, which is a really beautiful collection. It's like a greatest hits album of hiking in the Hudson area. That's going to be that's going to be a teal color. Okay. So the reason why that matters to us is because when we're hiking and we automatically start seeing yellow and teal, we want to know what that means. So yellow and teal. And I'm going to trace over this with the correct colors. Do I have a teal? Well, we can make one. We'll go over blending colors in a second. So let's just get this route squared away before we do that. Okay. So this is the blue part. Okay, so let me get this on camera. That would be good. So here's our parking lot. We hike on up and we do a loop. Goes from white to yellow and teal. And there's a little bridge that happens right here. It kind of connects the top of the mountain to the yellow and the teal. It's a blue trail. Okay. And it wends its way this way. And it's an option that we have on our hike. We're not going to worry about it though, because we don't take shortcuts in our crew. Right? We're the hardcore hikers. So I'm going to take my blue, my darker blue, my purpley color, and I'm just going to trace over this, and it'll help to communicate visually this is the blue trail. And the yellow trail, I'll just highlight yellow. It's kind of hard to see. It's a little bit faint. Okay. And this is giving us a nice little idea of what's going on over here. Okay, we have all these beautiful scenic viewpoints and stuff like that. That's fine. We're just distilling our information. Obviously, when we're there, we can tell it's a scenic point. But this is going to help us to just, again, distill our information and keep everything that we need for our hike and kind of just get rid of all the clutter and the noise for the things we don't need. For example, this trail is going in the other direction, so we're going to have to change colors to orange. Look at that. Okay. So at this intersection, which we're traveling this way, we're going to meet an orange trail, which will then eventually meet up with the white trail from the parking lot over here. So it's actually easier to start from the parking lot and work your way back just to keep everything in proportion. We could leave another reminder that this is orange here. Okay. And then this, and I just want to clarify a piece of information there a little bit better for you so that we don't get lost. Okay. Again, that's why we have that nice little asterisk when we say not drawn to scale. Okay, that's nice. When we're doing backcountry, that's when we really got to worry about measurements being right. Okay, when you're doing a trip where the maps are far, few, and in between, that's when you really want to sit down with your measuring tools and get to work on figuring accurate distances, because the difference between an inch at your desk could mean the difference of 3 or 4 days in the field. And that's a game you don't want to play. Okay, because it could be dangerous. Alrighty. So I'm gonna use this is a little trick. Once you have a trail that continues off of where you go, I stop coloring it in. Okay, because I know that I need to transition. Okay, I have white, I have to transition from yellow to orange. And if I'm still on a yellow or a teal trail, that means I'm going too far. Okay, and I want to go back to the parking lot over here. Okay. So some of the notes that I had earlier in the slideshow, I was talking about things like handrails and backstops and things like that. Let's say, for example, we accidentally wound up taking this yellow and teal trail way farther. We way overshot. We missed orange altogether. How do we know we went too far? Okay, this is how. So we just quickly draw this out over here, and great. We run into another man-made feature. It's a smaller road, but a road nonetheless. This is the mountain. This is called Mountain Road. Very apropos. If we reach Mountain Road, we went too far. This is an example of a backstop, just like a basketball. If you throw it up to get it in the hoop, hits the backstop and it bounces back the other way. This means we went too far, okay? Now, it's not so bad of an error, but you can imagine how bad these errors can get if we're not careful. So that's why we want to be able to really just make sure that we don't miss the mark when we transition to orange, okay? That's another benefit of simplifying this map. It's because you're going to be darn sure when orange happens, it's time to get on orange. Okay, handrails. That's another term I like to use. Okay. So a handrail is literally a terrain feature that runs parallel to another terrain feature. For example, I mentioned earlier our emergency escape route, which can take us to a parking lot, either west or east, is going to run parallel to a creek, okay? We know based on our relationship to the creek, which direction we're going to be traveling and where we need to go. If, for example, okay, we follow this creek in a westerly direction, we're going to use the creek as a handrail, meaning walking parallel to it, until we get to the white trail where our parking lot is. Same thing works this way, going in a northeasterly direction, or a regular easterly direction. You're going to follow this emergency escape route with the creek as your handrail until you reach the parking lot on 218. That's what a handrail means, okay? So that's a really good way to use the terrain as a navigational tool, as well as your compass, as well as your map, okay? Studying before your trip, no matter how small it is, no matter how big it is very important, because it could make your day either that much greater, or your situation that is an emergency less of so. Okay. So let's say, for example, we want to really customize this map. Okay. Now, one of my favorite things when I'm guiding a trip is when we encounter wildlife. Okay. Now, when I'm guiding a trip, usually I'm doing it with Yana's company. We are very, very conscious of of a philosophy. That philosophy is leave no trace. Okay. So these are outdoor ethic guides, right? And it talks about ways to plan and prepare, ways to leave a smaller impact or no impact on a trail, and how to make it better, right? It also includes wildlife, okay? So when we experience wildlife on a hike, we experience it from a very safe distance, right? We do not engage with the wildlife. We do not touch or feed the wildlife. We admire it from a distance, and then we continue on our way, okay? So one of my favorite animals to see is a beautiful and cartoonish marmot-looking creature. Basically, I love these fat groundhogs that live over by the roads, right? So let's say, for example, as we were driving in, I saw one of them, okay? I can add a little icon here. Here we go. That's my groundhog emoji. And I could point right there, and I can say 8:15 a.m., 11:21. So in my custom area over here, what the heck does that thing look like? I don't know. It looks like I don't know, it looks like a weird little cartoon devil, but whatever. You get it, groundhog. I'm going to write over here exactly what that icon means. Okay? And now my nature journal starts bleeding into my map here. Okay? Let's say, for example, at 3 in the morning, we start hearing rustling around and this weird kind of a sound, right? On this side of the river. And we look out, and what do we see with our flashlight? We see a porcupine arguing with its neighbor. It's 3 a.m. the next morning, okay? And with our little icon, again, it doesn't have to be professional by any means. We're going to say we see, I don't know how to spell porcupine. Porcupine, let's just say that, okay? And if you're somebody who's very, very in tune with the wildlife around you, like, if you're a bird or something like that, yeah, you can mark down on your map and use icons to indicate what species you saw and at what time. So you're giving yourself actual scientific information here. This is baseline data that you can go up into the park office and say, hey, I went on this hike. Here's the date. This is what I saw, and this is where I saw it. Great. That's actual scientific data right there. Okay. And you can put this in a nice, neat spreadsheet later and email it out to whatever kind of wildlife organization that you want. But it's a nice way to consider the way in which your map making can add to the natural history of a particular area. Okay. And let's say, for example, that let's say we're studying different trees. Okay. And we see that there is the tallest hemlock tree you've ever seen in your entire life. And it's somewhere over here. Okay. There we go. There's the tallest hemlock tree ever. Okay. Since that's a feature and not a piece of wildlife, we don't necessarily need to have the time in which we saw it, because we have the date on our map. Okay. But we have our hemlock. And if, let's say, for example, we're really interested in this hemlock, let's say we want to know what's living in it, we want to just survey the whole thing. What we can do, and I'll show you how to draw one of these types of trees, is we start with the two dots like this, top to bottom. This is going to represent the height of our tree, and we're going to say maybe the tree is yay wide. Okay, and if you've been in one of my drawing classes before, you're very familiar with this method. But the idea is what we're going to do is we're going to create a sketch of a hemlock tree. Okay. And these trees were really the bread and butter of the Dutch and English settlers in this region. Problem is these trees take forever to grow, right? So that's kind of why we don't see as many as there used to be. There are some areas still where there's hemlock. So that's why I get excited when I see one. I'm familiar with the history of the region, and they're a beautiful remnant of a bygone era, okay? So let's say, for example, we'll approximate the height of this tall tree. Here's Yana right here, and she's waving to you, okay? So the height of the tree, we're gonna base on the scale of a person standing next to it, okay? And from the bottom, and here's some shrubbery growing on the bottom here. Here's a rock, you know, whatever. From the bottom to the top, we're gonna write down what we see. So let's say, for example, we start at the top. Say we see a woodpecker. Let's say it's a red-bellied woodpecker. They're pretty common in this area. Okay, this kind of gives us a profile of like it's an apartment building in nature. Like these are the animal residents of this tree. We see a squirrel hanging out over here. Maybe there's a nest of some kind, and we don't know what that is. So we'll just add a little question mark. Maybe we'll go and we'll take a picture of it and we'll ask somebody later. You know, there's a little nest right here. What kind of nest could it be? And then we're also noticing things like, let's say, for example, we want to really emphasize there's something happening on the bark here. So we're going to draw like a little cartoon bubble. And this is going to be what we see. We see these little parallel lines, these holes that are next to each other in the bark. And there are certain species of bird, namely this fella up here, that are responsible for that. And we could write down exactly what this is in case the drawing doesn't do it justice. Okay. And now our map is sort of transitioning into not only a narrative, but also a kind of a field survey in a scientific diagram. Okay, and it's just another layer of information you could add onto your map to make it as robust as you want it or as custom as you want it. You know, there's a lot of great ways in which you can sort of streamline your adventure here by diluting the information, but also replacing that information with stuff that is relevant to your hike specifically. Okay, and that's a really cool way to document what's happening on a trip. So we have about 15 minutes left. All right. So at this point, we can either take a second to share what we've all drawn, or we can ask questions, or yeah, how about that? So really quick, I was really sweating being able to get through all this material in such a short amount of time. I know an hour and a half seems like a lot, but it really isn't. So what else? I just want to make sure I have everything. Oh yeah, and also if you want, and again, we did this with our goals on the back of the map. Okay, we could also add a narrative of everything we did step by step, or everything that we are planning to do step by step. And again, that's just information that you can share with the people that are back at home that are going to be your support team. Okay, cool. So I'm going to go into the chat really quick. Cool. So one of the questions we have in the chat is, I guess, more about the alignment of the map, not making north pointing straight up. That's simply because of where I'm sitting at my desk. I've definitely drawn maps where I am actually changing my chair at the table so that I'm facing north. But it's just simply because where I'm sitting at this point in time on my desk right now, I'm just using the north that goes with my compass, just like that. Now, if we were going to get really tricky about it, we can say, okay, I'll draw the map at this angle, and now everything's north. You know, it's easy. It's an easy thing to do. But yeah, that was just for the intents and purposes of today's exercise. Okay. Alrighty. So who else has questions? Has to be at least a couple. Would you take an official trail map with you in addition to your own drawn map? Absolutely yes, 100%. In fact, not only do I bring an actual physical map with me, I also have a redundancy on my phone, which is usually from one of the apps that I think, and Heather can correct me if I'm wrong, are the New York, New Jersey trail maps on any of the apps that are in the market right now?
Yeah, so all of our map sets are available on Avenza Maps, which is a free to download app, which you make in-app purchases to get the maps that you want.
Avenza, nice. And what about all trails as well?
No, just Avenza.
Okay, Avenza, cool. So that would be an example of a redundancy that I would also bring in addition to my homemade map. Okay. And for the art supplies that I bring, I definitely do. And I have a little baseline kit of art materials that I bring. Usually that is a technical pencil, just so that I don't have a little tip that gets broken off. I bring a technical pencil and either a fountain pen or a felt tip pen, and my 3 primary colored pencils. That is my baseline kit for when I'm drawing in nature, because I know for a fact if I bring these, I am 100% going to use them. Everything else that I'm going to bring is considered bonus material. So like watercolored paints, for example, pastels, things like that. That's stuff that I will bring if I have the intention of using it. But if I'm just going on a hike and I want to have some art stuff with me, I usually go with this. This is my basic kit right here. Primary colored pencils, mechanical pencil, and a felt tip pen or a fountain pen. Okay. So when the maps are updated, so Heather, here's a question for you. For the Avenza app, right? When the New York, New Jersey trail maps are updated, are the paper maps updated as well?
Yes. So they're at the same time a paper map update is released, it's also updated on Avenza. And oftentimes the Avenza update will be available a few weeks before we actually have our paper maps in hand because it's electronic. And it's available as soon as it's uploaded. And then at that point, the maps then get printed at the printer, and then so sometimes you can get the Avenza map update a lot quicker than the paper map update. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. Awesome. All right. So there's one other question that I missed. So when I plan a trip, like if it's, let's say, either a multi-day or maybe a multi-week trip, I definitely leave a copy of all of my trip logistics. That includes a map, that includes coordinates. That's like the most deep dive of what I'm doing. I make that available for my emergency contacts. Because if it is, let's say, middle of nowhere in the Amazon, I need to definitely make sure that that is a known factor. of where I'm going to be and when I'm going to be there. And if you don't hear from me from this date and time, then if I miss my check-in, you're going to start from my last check-in and you're going to look in between point A and point B, right? That's all. That's the value of leaving as much information with your emergency contact, because it could save your life. Absolutely. So we had a question about true north and magnetic north. Okay. So the simplest way to break this down is that our planet is tilted on an axis. Okay. And the magnetic poles are not a straight up and down line, right? We actually have to navigate off a little bit because the compass is going to tell us where magnetic north is all the time. Okay. True north, based on our latitude and longitude, and there is some math involved, you're going to have to calculate the difference between true north and magnetic north, because if you don't, especially if you're traveling hundreds of miles, something occurs called happens. It's called lateral drift. It means that although you're following your compass to the T, you're actually going to be slowly but surely creating a widening gap from where you want to go and where you actually are. And you need to course correct as you go, right? So that's the importance of knowing true north versus magnetic north. And that's why we pay attention to that outdoors. So, oh, that's awesome. Okay, I'm just reading through the Zoom chat right now. Every time someone types something in, the chat jumps down. Hold on, sorry guys. Okay. Do you draw a master map of your entire trip and then more localized specific maps for each part of the hike? So depending on where I am, yes, I would do that if I was traveling, again, a distance of hundreds of miles, like if I was on a river expedition or some type of, even if you were going to go on a rafting trip or a canoeing trip, that could be something fun for you. The master map of the entire trip is usually going to be my base point, and based on the specific needs of my adventure, I'm going to dice that up into smaller pieces so that I can get really into the nitty-gritty details with specific parts. So I'll start with the master map just to get the idea, and then I'll go from there. Yes, and a good map will tell you what your declination is. That is correct. Oh yeah, here's another fun fact from Yana. Yes, magnetic north also shifts over time because of the metal and the geological activity underground will shift things around. So that is, here, that's another good one too. How do you know if you're getting a quality compass? So a quality compass doesn't necessarily need to cost a lot of money, okay? We have a lot of different outdoor retailers and outfitters that provide quality equipment. I like, for example, using Sunto. That's a compass company that I really, really like. And really, again, bringing the example of the toy versus the real thing. If, for example, you bring a garbage compass next to a good compass, you're going to immediately notice just by the way the arrow behaves, right? You take out a map, you take out your compass, and if your needle's just dancing around, not doing anything really productive here, like this toy, right? You're going to tell right off the bat that it's a piece of garbage, okay? And usually a serious compass doesn't look like this. It doesn't look like a toy. It looks very boring, okay? It has measurement increments. It's very Spartan, right? It's a single purpose object, right? So for example, we want to use things that are durable, things that are going to be high quality and last for a long time. We're gonna probably spend upwards about maybe $50 maximum on a compass and get a really good one. Okay. Ooh, we also have a cool comment in here. There is an online declination calculator. All right, that's really cool. I'm gonna I'm going to definitely look into that for the next workshop. That's a good one. Thank you, Robin. We'll check that one out. All right. Do your guide trips and hikes? Oh, yeah. Sorry. So this is more of a question for Yana. Yana, let's say I wanted to learn more about navigation. Are there any guided trips where we can learn this skill?
Yes, absolutely. We do navigation trips, and I think the person that was asking the question was also specifically interested in doing more of a map making aspect. And I know that you and I have discussed taking this outside. So I would definitely love to make it a reality, and I know so would you. So for our people here in the Northeast, yes, we'd absolutely love to run trips. To take the map making skills and combine the art and the cartography, but actually do it outside on a trail.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. I'd love that. So on that note, let's go ahead and make the announcements. Just because we have only 4 minutes left, time has flown. Yes. So how do we keep the ball rolling, right? We just spent a good hour and a half learning a little bit about basic map skills and compass skills and some custom map work. Honestly, making hiking or just spending time in nature in general a part of your routine is the best way to get into this, really. So for example, Yana has a lot of different trips up on the calendar. In fact, I think, Yana, you have a trip to Storm King coming up pretty soon.
We do. We are doing it actually over Thanksgiving. So that's the map that James just drew for us. We're not camping overnight. It's a day trip, but we are going to go see all those beautiful views. And since a lot of people are not traveling this year due to the pandemic, we figured it'll be a great day to just spend time together, eat some sweet treats, and enjoy nature.
That sounds awesome. That's really cool. So aside from that, everybody has different interests. So here's a couple of books that I recommend if you're interested in outdoor skills in general, but also really comprehensive. The two books on the top really dive into navigation. Read up and become knowledgeable on it. Be like a subject matter expert. Really, it's so simple. You just take care to understand the basic stuff that we went through today. And again, I'm going to email everybody this slideshow for your reference, but just dive in and read the why behind the what. That'll help really just solidify the concepts that we barely glossed over today, right? And it also puts you in a great position to teach people what you've learned. So tonight I've taught you a little bit about navigation. Imagine the fun you could have with a relative or a loved one when you can teach them how to do navigating on an actual hike. That's something that that person will remember for a very, very long time. Okay. So I had mentioned the aspect of journaling. You could also, again, turn your maps not only as a safety logistical tool, but you can also turn that into sort of a narrative of your adventure and your journey. And again, like if you really want to kick it up to the level, join a community or a group. Just like, for example, the New York, New Jersey Trail Conference. And Heather, if you want to just talk really quick about how someone can get involved as a volunteer, I think everyone would like to hear that.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're interested in becoming a volunteer with the Trail Conference, you can visit our website, which is nynjtc.org. And on our website, we have this really exciting Get Involved tab that will show you our workshops and events, our volunteer opportunities, more about our programs. And if you want to, learn a little bit more before fully committing, we have an online learning library with a majority of our volunteer training workshop. So if you want to just listen for a little bit to see if something piques your interest, or if you want to sign up to do it, you can walk through the training first to see if it's really something for you. And while you're also on our website, our volunteers help us care for over 2,165 miles of trail from Albany in New York south to New Jersey, the Delaware Water Gap, So we have endless resources on finding the perfect trail for you. You can also buy our maps on our website, which help prepare you for responsible adventures while also supporting the trails that you love. And if you're looking to support us a little bit more, you can make a donation or become a member with us, which has a lot of really great perks for getting discount maps all year long and supporting your trails 365 days a year. So if anybody has any questions, or after tonight, if you want to talk a little bit more about getting involved with our trail family, like I mentioned earlier, I manage our social media accounts. So please feel free to reach out either on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter at NYNJTC.
That's awesome. And so speaking of social media, another great way to keep the ball rolling is to join an online community or group, which is what we have over here at my company, Hike and Draw. We have a wonderful community of nature lovers and artists who share their work as a community. Go to facebook.com/groups/hike and draw. And there I offer discounts, downloadable resources, drawing challenges, and more. So it's a really great place to meet a lot of people from actually around the world. It's uncanny, the wonderful reach of the internet, and how people from different areas of life can all come together in appreciation for nature. So this is a great community to get involved in. I encourage everybody to do that. And if you enjoyed this workshop, we have some more workshops coming up this November and December. Tomorrow night, for example, we have an interesting spin on nature drawing. We have a wonderful instructor and illustrator named Connor Nolan, who is going to be taking us through a nature-inspired fantasy drawing class where we'll be world building and creating wonderful places that are inspired by nature and also fantasy. I have my nature drawing intro workshop for those of us who are new to drawing. This is a great opportunity to sort of get the basic foundation for how you can continue involving art in your nature practice. And for those of us who are very scientifically minded, we have the botanical drawing intro and the nature drawing class, the nature journaling class. So those are two classes that are geared more towards scientific observation. And for those of you who join the Hike and Draw community on Facebook, we have a monthly social. And the next one we have is on the 27th at 6:30 p.m. Eastern time, where we're just going to hang out and draw together. And it's a really good time. So all other workshops are going to be on the website, www.hikeanddraw.nyc, or on Eventbrite. So feel free to shout if you have any questions. Feel free to reach out to me, James at hikeanddraw.nyc. And thank you all so much. Here's a little discount for you too that I'll include. That's something that you can check out later when you download this packet. And thank you all so much for your time, for your contributions, and most of all, for your interest in nature and in making maps. All right.